His appeal is visceral. Millions of people believe he speaks for them, he suffers for them, and he and only he has their best interests at heart. Well, this is the mantra of cult leaders, it's the MO of religious cranks, and as it turns out, it's the core component of the bond between Americans who feel they have no voice, but believe they've found one in Donald Trump. But the voice that they think speaks for them is actually the blowharding of a master con artist and practiced bait and switcher. And in the eye-opening check your wallet interview we're just about to run in a second, Trump's shameless greed and heartless manipulation is laid bare for the world to see in a revealing new book by Joe Conason, who details it all on today's Morning Joe. As you'll see, the savior of the downtrodden has redirected money, donated in earnest by his true believers for his election campaign. Well, he's redirected it to pay the legal costs for his own terrible sins and well-documented crimes. And in the final video of the interview we'll show you, Conason reveals the one factor that motivates contributors, and it is ugly. But first, let's remember, Joe Conason has a significant history as an investigative reporter, and as you'll see, his latest book comes at a crucial time of reactive political giving, as right-wing candidates lean into their supporters to wrangle their hard-earned dollars, while much of that money gets reappropriated for things the innocent contributor never intended. And as you'll see in our first clip of the interview, the story begins with an old saw: the fish stinks from the head.
The book sort of tells this story of how conservatives got to the point where they are milking their own constituents for every penny that they can squeeze out of them on false pretenses, in almost every case. I mean, and the epitome of this, of course, is the former president, who booked $250 million after the 2020 election by telling people that he was going to set up an official election defense fund. And of course, the money didn't go to that, but they pulled in hundreds of millions of dollars in 2 months after the election.
Follow the money. It leads to Mar-a-Lago and Donald Trump's invoice jar that he uses to pay the phalanx of attorneys he employs to keep his phallus out of jail. As the Brennan Center for Justice reported back in May, since leaving office, former President Trump has been involved in an array of criminal and civil litigations, some that relates to his campaigns and presidency, and some that does not. To cover the enormous legal bills estimated at $100 million, he has turned to his political action committees, PACs, essentially having campaign donors pay costs for which he would otherwise be on the hook personally. What a guy. Now in the next clip, Conason lays out a long history of conservatives scamming the well-intended donor by picking their pocket while whispering in their ears. Stick around for the final clip where Conason reveals the one emotion Roger Stone, Trump's trusted ally, says Republicans must exploit to their collective advantage. But first, in this clip, it turns out much like thinly veiled racism and false moral superiority, grifting donors is a time-honored tradition in the conservative movement as well.
It happened, John, it began, I would say, in its heaviest form with the Goldwater campaign, after the Goldwater campaign in 1964, when a man named Richard Viguerie figured out that suddenly Goldwater had amassed a critical list of donors to his campaign. Viguerie sent people to the Capitol, women, who wrote down the names of all the donors before the clerk of the House stopped them. And suddenly he had a big mailing list on magnetic tape. And what they could do was monetize those people with appeals to paranoia, prejudice, fear, the whole panoply, hatred, the whole panoply of appeals that the far right has used for many years. And what they could do with that list was get them to send money. Viguerie discovered, hey, we can get these people to send us money.
So what blinds people to the intentions of the truly duplicitous? Why do they gladly make donations they can't afford to the politicians who openly and blatantly manipulate them? Well, maybe it's because of the one thing that they all have in common. The one thing Joe Conason points out is the operative condition to generate contributions for the far right. It's the thing Roger Stone, the evil mastermind of manipulation, identifies as the card to play to get the rubes to pay. Check it out and give me an H.
But the basic appeal is the same. It's what Roger Stone said years ago, Trump's top advisor, you know him. He said, hate is the most powerful force in politics. And if you can find a way to appeal to people's basest motives, they will support you and, in this case, send you money. And the two elements kind of have fused in both the Republican Party and the conservative movement as a whole.
So let's stop and assess the millions of dollars regular people have lost in pursuit of Trump's agenda. Think of all the money his feckless and cavalierly criminal behavior has cost taxpayers, particularly those who aren't so easily bamboozled by his false promises. While we're at it, let's also calculate the emotional tax this circus of a candidacy has exacted on our national psyche. Hey, when you add it all up and see it's in the pursuit of a hate-filled agenda of intolerance and revenge, then please remind everyone you know that on November 6th, you can't ask for your money back, because this is a final sale.